Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, hosted by Renita Ray Davis, licensed clinical social worker, board-approved social work clinical supervisor, and facilitator of the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community. Join us as we travel through the social work journeys told by the Goddesses of Social Work community members, past and present, as they make their way toward clinical licensure.
Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. I am your host, Renita Ray Davis, and today's guest is Sharise Nance, LCSW. Sharise Nance is a trusted expert in workplace wellness, leadership burnout, and trauma-informed care. With 25 years of experience as a licensed clinical social worker, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, she helps individuals and organizations shift from surviving to sustainable success. She's the co-founder of Hand in Hand Counseling Services and the founder of Vitamin C Healing, LLC, known for building trauma-sensitive work cultures. Affectionately called the Compassion Fatigue Lady, Sharise is a pioneer in burnout prevention across Western PA and beyond. Sharice's impactful keynotes and trainings have reached institutions like NAMI, Johns Hopkins, and the University of Pittsburgh. She also is the force behind the SWAG Awards and the SWAG Alliance Foundation, which she co-founded with her husband to uplift and support social workers year-round. Off the clock, Sharise enjoys running, reading, traveling, and cheering on sports with her husband, William. Welcome to the show, Sharise.
Thanks for having me, Renita.
We're so glad you're here. Sharise, there are so many things about your bio. I think I was telling you that I just wanted to just jump in and start with. But the first one is, where did the phrase Vitamin C Healing LLC come from?
So I am not selling vitamins. That I've even got inquiries about asking my expertise about what type of vitamins and supplements people should take, and I am flattered. But it's a great peak. It's a great opportunity for conversation. So vitamin C is metaphoric for healing of the whole person, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, with the hope when people experience my services, they'll get the same feeling that they do with taking the actual nutrient vitamin C. My husband came up with the name because I said I wanted to create something that was holistic and comprehensive. And it was inspired by my first book. My very first book was titled Vitamin C Healing for the Mind, Body, and Soul, and that's where I met Chuck, the publisher. And I talked a lot about mental health, especially mental health in the Black community, trauma in the Black community, a lot of personal development, self-development, self-care. It's like vitamin C, it encompassed everything. And it was just food for the soul and for the spirit. And my mentor is like, well, you don't have to stop there. The book was created because I wanted to touch more lives beyond the private mental health practice, which is a traditional brick and mortar in Pittsburgh. And this book helped me reach more people. And she's like, what if you actually turn this into a business? And I'm like, never thought about that. And that's when Vitamin C Healing got expanded to a business in 2016. And we expanded to workshops, trainings, consultations, online courses, particularly for helping professionals like social workers who are at risk for compassion fatigue and burnout.
That is so great. And I love that we're gonna talk about compassion fatigue, but that is one of the things that before we hit record, we don't talk enough about with social work, but even when we're talking about it, we don't have a resource for it. And so the fact that it is specifically for a resource specifically for compassion fatigue. One of the things that I love about vitamin C, when you were just sharing that, I'm like, as I was thinking about it, I was like, I can get vitamin C from orange juice. I can get it from taking a supplement. I can get it from a variety of different places and modalities. And that's what I was hearing you say. Not only are we trying to affect and touch and impact a different places within the soul of the person we're serving, but we can also give it to you in different modalities as well.
I love that. Yep, that was exactly the purpose.
Well, you are walking in it. You are walking in your purpose. I love that. Sharise, I am always curious about this because it always leads to our second question. What did you want to be when you were growing up? Because did you know about social work? You don't have to get there
No,
yet. I know because I did, right? So
I
what
did
when
not.
you what did you want to be when you were growing up, or who did you most admire growing up?
Growing up, I was that kid. I was told, and I have some memories of it. I talked a lot, and I would ask a lot of questions. I was just always curious about the mind and people's behavior and why they did the things they did. Well, why? Why? And what happened? And what did she think? And what did she say? It was always me. And I knew I wanted to help people in some capacity. I just didn't know what it looked like. And I admire, there are so many people I admire. This is always a really hard question, but when I think about a woman that I admired, my grandmother, I was blessed to have both sets of my grandparents involved in my life, through adulthood. I had both sets of my grandparents until my late 20s. And I had my paternal grandmother up until earlier this year. She passed away at, she would have been 90 years old in June, and we were very close. We had a great relationship. She was truly, when you talk about I don't know why it's escaping me. When you talk about a woman who is like the ultimate matriarch, and she just exuded just confidence and wisdom, and she was just revered, and people loved her, and she had that balance of knowing when to nurture you and knowing when to be firm. She would give you that look and that finger, and everybody just knew. And I always admired that about her, just the way she would discipline people when they were out of line, in a way she would just love on and nurture people in a way that a grandmother could. And I just watched her be the boss that she was, for alongside her husband, in her own right, to her children, to her grandchildren, to her great grandchildren. And we were close since I was a kid, and even, my teenage years, college, and up until she passed away. And I just remember saying, like, wow, I want to be the boss like grandma. Grandma is a boss, but she does it in such a way that is just like eloquent and organic, and it just flowed. It wasn't forced. Like, she didn't demand attention, she commanded it, just because of who she was. And I just envisioned, like how she would, when she was a little bit younger, when I was a kid, walk in her heels and the way she dressed and everything. I was like, wow, I just admired everything about her, the conversations we had, the wisdom she poured into me, and just everything. And she was someone that I was like, I'm gonna be like grandma when I grow up. And I remember someone saying, like, you're like your grandmother. And I'm like, but that's a compliment to me. Thank you. That's, what I aspired to be. And when I think about what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was helping people in some capacity. But I remember telling her I envisioned myself like being in this building and walking in these hills with a Prada purse or suit, briefcase or something, and I'm going to be helping people. Well, we know social workers, because I've been on the front lines, and I ain't wearing no heels or taking no Prada bag. That's just not. But I just envisioned this. I just could not. I still have the visuals in my mind till this day, just walking into this building and helping people, but feeling good and looking good doing it, because we know there is this notion that social workers are busted. I think of how we were portrayed in the Precious movie with Mariah Carey. I'm like, that's not what the social workers look like. Come on. But as I is when I first got into the profession, I'm like, oh man, I thank God, because I'm a huge sports fan. I love football. I'm so excited the season is starting again. Huge Steelers fan. And okay. And I said, I miss my calling. I should have been like the one of the women analysts on the sideline, one of the sideline reporters, because I get into it. I debate. We have sports groups. That's where my husband and I met. And I'm like, if I wasn't doing social work, like that's what I'd be doing, some form of sports football journalism reporting. Like I love that. It's exciting. It makes my heart beat fast. So that's something that I could see myself doing if I wasn't in social work.
Charisse, we must be kindred spirits. We were talking about Mike Tomlin right before, but I guess I should have
Yeah,
said
mhm.
that team is my favorite team as well. I mean, I am a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, truly because of Coach Tomlin, absolutely. But I didn't even know there were sports groups. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
really?
I'll send you. We have one. We run one. My husband and I, a
Yes,
couple other people, we're like the admins of the group. We have fun. There's other teams in there, but we have fun with each other, and it's a family in there. So I'll make
that
sure
is
to
so
to you.
cool. Yeah, I love that. But also, I was thinking, you know, there's social workers in sports now, right? And maybe that Prada bag and them red bottoms was because you're a social worker
Hmm.
within. I think everybody needs a social worker. So those athletes, those
I
coaches,
do too.
all,
I,
they need a social worker. And so maybe, because I love that you said you hold that vision to this day, and I
I
believe that
do.
if you were given a vision, then you were meant to walk it out in this lifetime. And
Mm,
so
okay.
yes, if I was watching the ESPYS last night and they talked about Big O, a basketball player, a
Mhm.
black man who changed the free agency rule in the NBA, where the league really ruled over the players for so long, and then he did that work and was ostracized to change the free agency rule in the NBA. And I'm just thinking, social workers, that's what we do. We go in and we change
That's
policy,
exactly what we do. We push up against all
all
types of
of
systems,
it, all of it.
unapologetic.
And so I'm like, I see you with your Prada bag and your red bottoms walking in as a social worker within the fact, because that is the question. My final question for you is about passion. How can you combine your passion with what you're doing with social work? And I think we're already talking about it now.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. But I want to say your grandmother's name. I love doing that. I want to say your grandmother's name.
Magnolia. Magnolia
Magnolia.
called her Mag. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing name. What an amazing name. And I wanted to also just say my condolences to your family for losing such an amazing matriarch just this year.
Yeah.
Just this year.
It
Wow.
was special.
Yeah. I wanted to, I was thinking about the fact that Chuck was your publisher and he's the one who introduced me to
Mm-hmm.
you. And um one of the thoughts that I was having was, and I haven't even gotten to your journey yet. And so maybe we'll use this question to go into what was your social work journey. But you are a trusted expert in workplace wellness and leadership burnout. You are a speaker, an author, and an entrepreneur. And I'm just like, those are so many different passions. But I guess first we need to know, how did you learn about social work? And how did you even get into this field?
Yeah. So again, I didn't even know there was a name for this work. I told you I wanted to help. And initially, I thought I would be a child psychologist because that was the term that was associated with help back then in the 90s when I was graduating from school was psychologist. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a child psychologist. But once I got into college and started doing internships and doing the work, I'm like, it's bigger than the kids. It's these systems. Like, how can I, if I'm going to be a part of affecting change, I have to affect these systems, and I started becoming passionate about it. And then I saw how challenging it was. Well, I'm not one to back down from a challenge. Even though I was a shy kid, experienced some bullying, But I think that made me even more determined to help people who struggle with that, to help them find their voice and help them gain the confidence to be able to use their voices. So one of my first jobs was with children, youth, and families. And I discovered really quickly, like, okay, I don't want to be the one who's a part of, permanency and having to remove kids from homes. It's just, I understand the dynamics, but I'm like, it's just not for me. And you talk about systems and advocating for families. And even when I became a therapist, I use my part of social work is really the mental health. When I became a therapist in a community, I found myself accompanying parents to meetings, whether it was in school or was at the doctor's office or it was in court. And that theme came back around again where they were getting bullied by these systems. They'd be calling everybody in from the teacher to the janitor to everybody. And it just felt like it was 10 against one. And sometimes you would see the parents shrinking in their seats, or you would see them buck up, like it was a response to what they were experiencing. So a lot of times there would be some coaching on, okay, it's not going to just be me taking the lead because you got this, like this is your kid, like you know what your kid needs better than I ever will, but I'm here. I'm going to sit beside you because I believe in working position. If I'm sitting beside you, we're aligned. I'm here for you, but you got this. You are the best advocate, for your kid, and I'm here to back you up. And you would just see the difference in their tone, like in their posture, when they felt supported against these systems. So I'm like, yeah, this is the best way that I can affect change by doing things systemically by supporting them. And I'm like, what's the best way for me to continue to do this? Because at this point, I had a bachelor's degree, and it's like, this is social work. So that's when I got into the MSW program at University of Pittsburgh, and I still didn't know what path I was going to take in social work, but I was just so intrigued by it. And I started meeting people in my job that were MSWs. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. They have their master's in social work. And my dad's like, oh, social workers don't make any money. Are you crazy? Like, I can't just feed you forever. Like, you got to move out at some point. I'm like, but this is what I want to do. It's going to happen for me. The money's going to be a byproduct. And I get that. You're right. But this is, oh my gosh. And then he saw how passionate I was. And he's like, well, I'm here to support you. I just want you to be able to take care of yourself when I'm not here anymore. So I heard him, and he was right. And it was, quite a journey with when it comes to that. But initially, I wanted to take the route of school social work. So I took that homeschool visitor track, and I learned a lot of things about school policy. I did an internship with, two amazing social workers who are mentors. One actually worked for us at our private practice a couple years ago. So this is interesting how things come full circle. He was supervising me, and then I was supervising him. Um, we were colleagues, and I learned so much from them. And I'm like, but I I think I want to do more clinical stuff because it just felt like a lot of administrative stuff. And I really, at that point in my career, I enjoyed talking with people and hearing about their stories and connecting the dots. And so I started doing, because they say, oh, you got to get clinical experience. What does that mean? And so I started doing more direct practice work in my social work. I took the direct practice path in track and social work. And but I still found myself doing community work. So they intersect in so many ways, direct practice and community work. And then my partner, I hand in hand Tess, we're good friends. We were college roommates. She's like, oh, you should try family based. I'm like, I don't want to be a therapist. She's like, oh, you might like it. I'm like, okay, I'll try. And I ended up, it was a very taxing job. It was very hard. Family based mental health services is the most intense in-home services in the state of Pennsylvania. I learned so much from my work there. I did that for about 5 or 6 years as a clinician on the front lines and as a supervisor. And it really helped shape me into, the clinician, the social worker, the business owner that I am today. I just can't even, we don't have enough time to mention like all of the experiences that I got from that experience. I had the best supervisor when I did that work, but it opened up my eyes. I'm like, wow, I get to be a clinician and I get to do systems work, which is what I really wanted to do and I needed to do it. It fed my heart and spirit. And after that, I continued to do social work in the community. And then I got to open up the private practice with, my good friend. This was back in 2013. So we'll be celebrating 12 years this year, which is, it's been an amazing journey. We've helped a lot of people, employed a lot of people. We have therapists who have went and started their own practices, and I'm like, that's a big deal. Like we were part of that journey to give, and they're social workers, they got licensed clinical social workers from us and went and started their own practice. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's what it's all about. That they're taking more non-traditional paths of the social work journey. Like it doesn't have to be one size fits all. Like there are so many things that you can do with this degree. And that was one of the main reasons why I chose social work, because it's like, okay, I can decide if I don't want to stay in direct practice and be a clinician, I can pivot. You can pivot anyway, but I can still pivot and do the work that I'm doing. And that's what social work just opens up those doors for you. And that's how I find myself here, as an entrepreneur, speaker. I think they all overlap. If you're an entrepreneur, you probably do some speaking, you've probably, written a book, you probably had a business, like we're creatives, the mind never turns off. We're always coming up with something. We're always creating something. We always have some vision. And that has always been in me. I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I just didn't know how it would come to pass for me to make money doing that versus it just being a hobby.
And Sharise, that's such a great. I wrote so many things down, but then when you just said that, I was like, yeah, let's stay there for a minute because I think we social workers don't realize. Maybe more do,
Now,
but
now,
now they do.
now,
Yeah, because both you and I have been doing this 25 plus years, and so I
Mhm.
know for me in 1988, 99, when I graduated my BSW and my MSW, the thought of being an entrepreneur was not even on my radar. And I guess I'm wondering, how did you know that you could become an entrepreneur within the profession of social work?
Good question. And I love one of my favorite questions. My paternal side of family, my dad's side of family, family full of entrepreneurs. So it was instilled in me when I was a kid. I saw it. My grandparents, when they babysat me, when my parents went to work, they didn't have jobs when I was a kid. I'm like, wow, they don't have jobs, but it seems like they're well off. They're living well, they're living good, but I didn't see the struggle. My parents saw the struggle, but I didn't. My grandfather carried garbage. My grandmother cleaned homes until she got to University of Pittsburgh and got a promotion there. But once they had a bar business, catering business, once it started doing well, she left her job and they ran that together. So I was born around that time and I've always seen them living well. And I'm like, wow, they do this with their own. And I would ask questions and, they taught me a little bit about money, but I missed the part about saving money. I'm learning that lesson now because they invested well. I'm like, I know they shared some things with me, but I guess I just wasn't listening to that part. I just listened well to the part. I can make money, but I'm getting better at saving and investing money. But I saw that with them. And then my uncle, who's younger than my dad, he's always had a business. And now he has a successful business in Pittsburgh. And he's had vending machine companies and he's passed that down to his son. So it was always around me. That's why I said the spirit was there. Like I saw them being successful. I know they had their struggles. I just didn't see it. I seen the success part of it. And I know multi-level marketing um, groups get a bad rep, but I was a part of one. And what I appreciated about it was the professional and personal development is just like second to none. Just being in a room with people who have high energy, they're excited, they're motivated, and just the things that you learn about what it takes. Like you're building your mental muscle because there's a lot of rejection. There are people who don't believe in it. They say bad things about it, or maybe they have bad experiences and they share it with you. So you have to have thick skin and you have to be tough mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And it prepared me for entrepreneurship because it can be a roller coaster, which is actually one of my favorite books by Darren Hardy, Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster. I don't give many shout outs, but that book definitely helped me make that transition from my full-time job to full-time entrepreneurship. It is, I would never tell anybody to just quit their job. You need a strategy and you have to build that mental muscle because you're going to be told no a lot. There's going to be a lot of rejection. There's going to be a lot of challenges, a lot of hard days, a lot of wondering like, are they going to pay that invoice so I can pay my bills? Versus when you have the security, if we want to call it that, of a job, because what is security now, right? With everything going on. But when you know that every 2 weeks or twice a month, you're getting that paycheck deposited in your account, you get comfortable. But when you are an entrepreneur, if you don't make it happen, it's not happening. Like they said, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Well, not just you and your team. And then if you have a team, you have to inspire them to want to work and do the things to grow and to continue to be motivated and inspired by your mission and your vision. But even on my hardest days, I can't see myself going back. I love this, I mentor, other people who are interested in it. And, I coach people around this because it is something that I think if anybody is interested in it, they should have information. And I'm always open to that conversation.
I I had got lost in your diet. I was like, yes, give us more. That
I
was
can talk about this forever.
yes,
Yeah.
that was I am curious. Who is the author of the Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster?
Darren Hardy. He wrote that and the compound effect, those are two of my favorite books.
Awesome. Awesome. We're gonna
Great books for, mindset and just the stories and approaches are great. I
yeah.
highly recommend those two books.
One of the things that I notice, and maybe I'm noticing it, or maybe it's because I'm noticing because it's me, is that
Hmm.
sometimes we don't I'm calling them continuing education outside the social work field or mental health field. And when I just heard you say when you were a part of the multi-layered
Yeah,
marketing,
multi-level marketing, network marketing. Yeah.
yes, is it sounds like it is important to
That's how
be.
I came across those types of books. I wasn't reading
Mhm.
those types of books before. I think I had my first stint in like 2008 or 2009, and they valued education. They said leaders are readers, and that sticks in. I read something every day, whether I'm listening to it on Audible or I'm opening up a couple pages, because I have to feed my spirit and I have to feed my mind. And in order to be a good speaker, I need to read. Like and just to have knowledge about things beyond my profession, it makes you a more well-rounded person. But they would even, and they held us accountable. They wanted to know what books we were reading, what we got out of them. And then they would put us in front of the room. That's why I'm very comfortable with speaking. Like there would be impromptu speaking, especially once you got promoted to different levels in the company. I remember going we would have Saturday trainings, and my mentor at the time was like, okay, Sharise, you're up, you're going to be speaking today. I was like, whoa, I didn't prepare. He's like, you're a leader. You need to always be prepared. I'm like, he's right. He got with me, and that is something that always stuck in my head. Like I need to always be prepared. I can do an impromptu speech on topics that I have knowledge about.
One of my mentors, she was a social worker, LCSW. She said, always be ready. Always,
Yeah.
she said, always be on ready, because we
All
would
right.
go to meetings and
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I didn't dress whatever. And she's like, always
Right.
be on ready. And I was like, oh,
Always.
okay. Yeah.
Especially as social workers, if we're, advocating and challenging these systems, you might be called to do something. You got to be ready and prepared. So that's why I said, yeah, there were some challenges and it didn't work out for me the way I had expected it to. But this is the big takeaway that the books that I've read and the books that I continue to read, and just valuing my professional development beyond what I need for continuing education credits to maintain my licensures. I will forever be grateful for that.
I'm so glad you share that with our audience because
Yeah.
I think that is important that we need to look outside of the profession for additional inspiration in order for
Abs-
us to be, like you said, with the vitamin C healing, so that we can be more holistic as practitioners as well. I wanted to go back to something that you said earlier. You said it in three different ways that I wrote down at least. You said, at
okay.
that point of my career, you said, when I decided to go that track or that path in social work. And then you said something about direct practice and community. What I kept hearing repeatedly was there's several different tracks and you get to choose which one
Hmm.
you want to go into as it relates to what's calling you at that point in your career. And what I also heard was, as time has passed within your career, what path or track or the point of where you were in your career, it evolved and it changed. And do you
Yes.
want to speak to that a little?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that back up so we can talk to the audience about that. we I think it's important that we don't think that just because we choose a track, if you choose, for example, if you choose school social worker, like that, that's not fixed. That can change and it may evolve as you evolve. I know for my mom worked at her job for 47 years and then she retired. She worked at the same job, maybe had a different couple positions, but she stayed there for 47 years and then retired. I mean, that's commitment. And that's not my journey. And I've had to accept that. And I'm okay with that. And just depending on where you are in your life, your journey, just you might need something different from your profession. Some people leave the profession, and you and I both, Renita, are doing things to ensure that we retain quality social workers so that they can open up their mind to the different opportunities and possibilities within social work. It doesn't have to be the traditional path. We're in 2025. If you don't want to work in an office doing administrative social work from 9 to 5 every day, you don't have to do that. If you want to explore your options, you can. If you want to explore opening a business or starting a nonprofit, there are just so many opportunities and resources. There are resources now, like so many universities. If you're wondering, like, okay, she's talking about all these resources, where can I find these resources? I would say start with your university, the career services offices that I did not take advantage of. I was just there to get my credits and my experience and move along. I wish I had taken more advantage of that, but the opportunities are available to you through your career services. You'd be surprised at the free resources that you find when you stay connected with your university or you start there.
Absolutely. And even past the universities, because a lot of places get grants and they're looking for people. They need the numbers to say, "Hey, I
Yeah.
need this resource." And
Mhm.
literally the last podcast I did, she was talking about going to the Alzheimer's Association and getting all of their free resources. You can create a niche in Alzheimer's and dementia if you wanted to. Going to SAMHSA and getting all of their free resources. And she was saying stockpile, because you never know what you're going to be invited to. Always be on ready. You never know what you're going to be invited to. And you're like, oh, here's a mental health conference. I've been invited to speak. And now I have all these free resources because I paid attention to who was sending free resources. And you take those things with you. And guess what? You're probably going to be invited back. Because not only did you bring your speaking engagement, you also bring you brought take-home packets and resources for people. And there's a lot of free resources out there. And as social workers, we need to know about those anyway. Sharice,
Absolutely.
I want to talk about your mama, your beautiful mother who worked 47 years at the same organization. And I wrote that down because it's so important. One of the things I get, and I love saying this all the time, I have the honor of supervising an amazing community of social workers. And one of the things that, especially my newer social workers, they think when they join supervision, they have to stay at the job for the 2 years they're in supervision. And I'm like, baby, you don't have to stay at that job. If you're miserable, if it's not in
Because they
alignment with,
signed a contract. If they
yeah,
signed a contract. If they signed a contract. Oh.
you do not have to stay at that job at all. And so, but I think it comes from, I know, I used to think to myself, my sister, she stayed at an agency for almost 20 years. My brother stayed at the state for over a decade. We kind of been conditioned to stay at these agencies and organizations that we're at, and we can't leave. And the verbiage I hear a lot is, I was going to try to stay for 2 years. Who made up that rule?
Yeah,
Who made
yeah.
up that rule? And so I guess when your mother staying at 47 years and hearing you kind of inspiring people to, have a plan, of course, when you leave a job, not saying you're jumping into entrepreneur, but social work is such a big playground. If you find you're in a prison setting, and for me, children are not my ministry. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club with my BSW undergrad degree, and I was like, oh, I found out really early children are not my ministry. I enjoy working with women and emotional caregivers. However, it took me a minute going to this job, that job, and the other job to say, oh, this is the population I enjoy working. But if I stay at the Boys and Girls Club, which people are doing amazing work at that organization, I would have been miserable and probably would have made people around me miserable as well. So, do you want to speak to not having or feeling tied down to one population or even one job for the remainder of
Yeah,
your career?
absolutely. And with my mom is her birthday on this date. She turned 68 years old. So during that time period, that generation, there was an expectation and a mindset that you stay on the same job until you retire. And then you get your pension and you get this, you live off your retirement and Social Security. And she is part of that generation. Now, me being the generation behind her, there's still some of that. And I may have been in this profession for a long time, but I've never stayed at the same job for maybe longer than 5 or 6 years. And yes, and what I'm learning is maybe after 2 or 3 years with the type of work that we do, people get burned out. And I was just talking about this. This is my entrepreneurial mind going. I was sharing this philosophy that I had with one of my colleagues that to help with them, we're going to get to compassion fatigue and burnout. One of the main things, yeah, we have a lot of resources, we have a lot of strategies, recovery thing that you can do, but something that we could do on a systems level is what if after every 3 years social workers, therapists, people who are exposed to it at the most risk for it, what if they were evaluated to see where they were mentally and emotionally and allow them a sabbatical? Even teachers can take sabbaticals. When have you ever heard of a social worker being allotted a sabbatical? We have a compassion fatigue and a burnout and a retention problem, and COVID didn't help it. So if we're wanting to alleviate that, doing something like that to see where people are mentally every 3 years, we might have something there because I'm seeing it. That's around the time when people start to get tapped out. And they are like, oh, I need some time, or, I think I'm done with this job, or I might even be done with this profession. And I think we would be able to retain more quality social workers. So I just say to any social worker out there, you have permission to change your mind. And many of us are getting into these professions. When I graduated college, I was 21 years old, going on 22. Your brain is, according to research, our brains aren't even fully developed at 21 until we're like 25, 23, 27, depends on, what research you're reading. So how can we truly make an informed decision for our entire lives at 21, 22 years old? That's why I say the social worker that you are at in your early 20s will not be, I'm 45 years old. You will not be that social worker at 45. You won't. And that's not a bad thing. You evolve, the profession evolves, and it's okay for us. It's actually best if we evolve with it versus getting left behind.
Absolutely. And one of the other benefits, I'm going to say a couple of things here. One of the other benefits of maybe looking at moving positions after a certain
Hmm.
amount of time is new social workers are always graduating and getting licensed. And so these agencies and organizations are hiring them, and then they're hiring them for more than whatever they hired you at. Right. And so
Yep.
then going to other different agencies or organizations, one, you get to see how other people do it. And I think that's important because you kind of get
Yeah.
stuck in the same way. I mean, we've seen it. People have been at a place 30 years. They were there when the agency started and they're like, this is how we've always done it. And then you get a new social worker who comes in and she has these beautiful, bright ideas and they get oppressed. And so, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so then moving
Yep.
every few years, one keeps you from being stagnant in how agencies or organizations are doing things, but then it helps you with your value point, your price point as well, because you're taking what you've gotten from these different agencies and organizations and being able to synthesize them, bring it to a new organization, and you can ask for more money, right? And that goes back to some of that old way of thinking that your daddy's like, baby, I can't feed you all your life. But
Yeah.
it helps us with our own price point when we're willing to get out of our comfort zone and move to a different agency and organization. But the second point I wanted to make, and you can speak to that if you want to, but I don't want to lose this because I'll lose it because I know we're moving into the fact that you are affectionately known as the compassion fatigue lady. And I was super excited to be able to interview you on that, especially because we're talking to social workers. But when I was teaching I read in a textbook that the burnout rate for social workers was 7 years. Then a few years ago, I read a article that said the burnout rate was 5 years. But then just listening to you, you're suggesting we need to be looking at this thing at 3 years. And so as we move into what do you wish more helping professionals understood about burnout and compassion fatigue?
Yeah.
753, we're yeah.
I don't know. 7 years. I don't know. And seven, and so now we have to look at the entirety of it, look at the big picture, because now I'm wondering when was that research done prior to COVID? Because now we're like, there's BC before COVID, and then there's, AC after, I guess it's after COVID. So maybe before COVID, we're thinking about 5 to 7 years, but now it's looking more like 3. And I think a big part of that too is people know they have options. COVID showed us that we have so many options. People had time and space, which, people began to prioritize and be okay with more self-care and recovery. And it's like, yeah, I'm done. I've actually been burned out, but it's been masked by me over functioning and being so busy. And now I've had time to sit down. I realized, yeah, I'm exhausted. And when I say 3 years, people come to this why in a row where it's like, "Ugh, I'm done with this job. I need something. I don't know if that's FMLA so that I can decide and take care of myself. And maybe I'll get my second wind or come back. Or during that time, maybe I realize that this work isn't for me. It doesn't matter what boundaries I set or if I do a change within the profession. So I would say 7 years right now. It seems I would love to see what that research says now, if there's any, but based on what I'm seeing in the clinicians that I'm supervising and I work with around 3 years, and I even saw 3 years a lot before COVID when I was in family based. That's when a lot of the therapists, many of them who were social workers, would start to feel burned out. So if you're doing that intense work, if you're carrying a caseload of 25, 30 people and you're in relationships with these people, you're seeing them at their worst, you're helping them process trauma, you're dealing with psychosocial stressors and all of those things week in and day out for 3 years. Uh, it would be worth at least looking at where they are at 3 years.
I do want to say you're absolutely right. That was before COVID. And
Mm.
remember, it was a textbook. So that part, how long does it take that textbook to get published and all that? But it was before COVID. And then the article that I read that said 5 years was after COVID. But I am loving this 3 year rate. I think it's something that needs to be explored. I'm sure you're collecting data on it because I'm
Hmm.
thinking you're absolutely right. If not even sooner than that, depending on the space that you're working in. And Sharise, you just mentioned all the holding of space for the most difficult of these or the least of these that social workers are doing. We hadn't even talked about the systemic
Yeah.
obstacles that they face and the documentation uh, overwhelm that they experience that increases or exasperates that burnout rate to get us at that 3 year mark a lot faster. And one of the things too, and you can speak to this, and I do want you to, I know you have your own point of view as it relates to compassion fatigue and burnout, but one of the things I was thinking when I talk to social workers who've only been at a job, and I'm thinking about the prison right now, for maybe even just a year and a half, they are physically becoming ill less than a year into that type of work. They're physically becoming ill because obviously your stress is manifested in body somatic
Yeah, absolutely.
symptoms. Yeah,
Absolutely.
somatic
The body keeps
symptoms.
the score, the book that many of us read by Dr. Vanderkolk.
Yes, yes. And so but what I get from them is they feel like they failed in some way because they weren't able to keep that job or stay in that position or hold that space for people for longer than 2 years. For me, when I was a hospice social worker, I could only do that for 2 years. I was only able to do that for 2 years because it was so heavy on me. And I never had any qualms about moving on to another one. But the women I have the honor of working with, a lot of them feel some guilt and some shame because they're like, I want to be able to hold this space. These people need me, and all you know the verbiage. Do you want to speak to them as it relates to
So
compassion fatigue and burnout?
I absolutely do. I hear those when I hear that, I'm thinking about when I'm facilitating workshops, we do a an activity called beliefs about compassion fatigue, that either these are beliefs and expectations that have been projected onto us by other people, maybe or upbringing, class that we've served, society, or maybe these are beliefs that we've came up from ourselves. I shouldn't have missed that when I was with them. Say you leave a client and all of a sudden they're suicidal, or worse, something happens, they hurt themselves. So we internalize that, we take that personally. Or I shouldn't be tired. Why can't I do more? This shouldn't be this hard. All of these are beliefs, and there's one that I hear that I've heard a lot. I don't know if I hear it as much anymore, but I remember there was a time in my career for therapists that I've supervised and even colleagues, they should be grateful. They should be grateful that um, they're receiving help, or just anything. So what I want to say to all of these beliefs that we experience about our roles that can contribute to compassion fatigue, or these are symptoms. We don't want to normalize these. Yes, it is a reality of the work that we do, but it doesn't have to be the reality or our reality. And there's a term or a concept coined by, I cannot think of their names. There's these two women that wrote this book. It was a great book called Burnout. It has a pink cover, and they talk about this concept called human giver syndrome. And human giver syndrome is the expectation or the obligation to give our whole selves to humanity at no cost, at the cost of us sacrificing our own well being. And this is common in caregivers, social workers, therapists, women. So we want to look at these as symptoms and treat them as symptoms. And how do we begin to reframe our thinking around that? And what I say to that is grace and space. It's going to take time. We didn't get here overnight, so we're not going to undo it overnight. We know the biology about the brain and the nervous system and rewiring. The brain has elasticity, so it can be rewired. It's just going to take some time. Some of us have been holding these beliefs for decades. We came into the profession with these beliefs, and we've done this work. We've built relationships based on these beliefs, and now we're exhausted from them. So now we have some undoing to do, and it's just going to take some time for us to undo that and to heal from that.
What a powerful answer. Grace and space. Having grace and space with yourselves as you redo or undo. I love that you said undo these beliefs that we have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to continue talking just for a couple more minutes about compassion fatigue and burnout. And the question I had, and you answered it, but if you want to
Mhm.
expound on it anymore, what do you wish more helping professionals understood about burnout and compassion fatigue, especially those who serve others while neglecting their own needs?
Man, that question, there's so many things that I wish they understood. And with this question, because yes, we know as individuals we experience compassion fatigue and physical and emotional exhaustion that causes a pronounced change in our ability to have empathy for the people we serve. The cost of caring, I refer to it as a common cold of the helping profession. And there are things that I wish we knew individually, but I think it starts with systems. What I wish systems and organizations understood is that your top performer, your highest producer, your social worker or worker who's showing up and smiling and getting the job done, it doesn't mean that they're okay. It doesn't mean that they can take on more cases. Sometimes, depending on how you were raised, depending on your beliefs, it's like, oh, I'm not going to complain about it. This is my job, so I'll just do it. Most of your employees, your social workers, are functioning in survival mode. And it's imperative if you are employing a social worker that you recognize that this is a common cold of the helping profession of social workers, that we're at risk. And if we don't do something, if we're not proactive, if we don't do preventative measures, we are going to catch that cold. And to the individual social workers, I will say to you, just because you have been holding that belief or experiencing these symptoms, that headache you get at the end of the day every day, or it's hard to fight off illnesses. Obviously, you want to get a rule out from a medical profession. That doesn't mean that it's normal and it's okay. That could possibly mean that you are struggling with compassion fatigue, given the type of work that you do on a daily basis. And then, not to it's almost like giving information in a fire hose, but I want to make a few, I want to differentiate between some terms. So there's compassion fatigue, where that's more like the depletion that we experience from doing work. That's the empathy on empty. And then there's empathic distress, which usually happens before compassion fatigue. And that's the exhaustion from empathy, the exhaustion from helping people, and nothing's happening. Like what you were saying about their beliefs. It's like, wow, I should have been able to do more, or I wish there were more resources, but people are experiencing funding cuts, so resources are tapped out, and I don't know how this mom is going to pay her bills, or the systems keep failing as people, and we internalize that. So we experience this distress from empathy, like we still enjoy the work, but we're just exhausted because we're doing all. It's almost like we're just pushing up against this brick wall and nothing is moving. And you do that enough, and if you don't find ways to be intentional about your recovery a lot, at least daily, yeah, your compassion fatigue and then burnout is right after that.
I love that you said a lot, at least daily. This isn't,
At least
yeah,
daily.
uh-huh.
Yeah, this is not wait till the weekend and have self-care Sunday. This is, this is it's work, being intentional about your recovery. I know some of us have back-to-back sessions, and my philosophy is we need micro breaks in between those sessions. You need at least a moment or two to decompress from all of that intensity. You need a reset. Doesn't your phone get a reset when it's the battery's about to die? My laptop died on me last night and it was just done. It wouldn't do anything until I charged it. We're humans. We need even more care than our electronics.
Absolutely. One of the things a simple thing that I tell social workers to do is I get up. One, so get up so you don't become a chair. My sister and I were teasing about that. Don't become a chair. So you don't become
Yeah.
a chair, but we get up, but I just go wash my hands. Something so you've been talking about, alternative ways to do this practice. And I am definitely alternative way thinker. One of the things I believe very strongly is I gotta wash off other people's energy, you know?
Yes.
And so I
Because we
get
know
up,
yeah,
go ahead.
it's as contagious, if not more contagious, than a cold. That energy. I agree. Washing a day off
So
too.
you get, yes, and definitely wash your day off. Yeah. But the micro ways of getting up and releasing other people's stuff and other people's trauma is just get up, don't become a chair, and then go wash
Mm.
your hands as often as you can and take your lunch
Right.
breaks and preferably
Take
take
your
them.
lunch. Oh my
I love how
gosh.
you rolled your eyes.
Oh, please take a lunch.
Take
That you
lunch.
are not going to save the world or rescue someone by sacrificing 20 minutes of disconnecting and pouring into you by fueling your body. Like nothing is going to change.
Absolutely nothing. Take your lunch and preferably take it outside because we
Yes.
teach, and that's another thing I talk about. We teach people how to treat us. And if we're willing to work through lunch, if we're willing not to get up for a moment and just go wash our hands, if we're willing to just keep going, we become bitter and resentful towards these organizations. But actually, darling, we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There is a lot. There is a lot within our control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And organizations, the way organizations can be helpful is to reinforce that too.
Yes, yes, completely agree. I love that you've been talking about beliefs. Ah, that's just such an amazing energy that I love. You've been challenging and asking us and um, inviting us to challenge our own belief systems. And so, one of the things that I love hearing about is what is one belief about social work, especially after 25 plus years in the field, that has evolved for you since you began in this profession?
Mm, that is such a layered question. It's such a good question, but it's layered. I've been thinking about this, and I keep coming back. Maybe you've had people talk about this, and we can't talk about it enough, or the opportunities. Even though the entrepreneurial spirit was instilled in me, well, I don't know if you instill a spirit, but entrepreneurship was instilled in me. The spirit was probably always there. I didn't see that as an option doing social work. That's why I gravitated to multi-level marketing. It's like, okay, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I need to be doing something else. But no, I can do both. I can still do the work I love, talk about the things that I'm most passionate talking about, and still be a social worker. I'm still a licensed clinical, one of my roles is still a licensed clinical social worker. People hire me and I do well to talk about compassion fatigue, to talk about burnout, to train their staff on trauma informed care, to provide supervisions to organizations. And this is all because I have the credentials of social work and I get to do it on my dime and charge what I like to charge. They could choose to pay it or not, but I do have to talk to a lot of people and I do have to market something that it's important that we know is that even if you don't like sales, you are in sales, whether you have a business or you are working at a job. We're constantly selling ourselves. You're selling yourself at an interview. So be okay with that. It's okay for us to brag on ourselves, to be okay with talking about our accomplishments and why we're an asset.
I love that because one of the things I used to say, I'm going to say it publicly, but I was going to say, I think social workers are like used car salesmen because, we're having, especially direct practice, we're having to um, convince our clients to have buy-in with their treatment plans, and we're
Yeah.
having to convince our organizations to have buy-in with policies that could benefit the organization and or their clients. What we do is wanting to convince people to have buy-in and healthier options. And so I used to say we're like car salesmen, like this is why you need this kind of energy. And so why not do that for yourself as well? Why not do that for yourself? You are your biggest asset. So sell
You are.
yourself. Mm-hmm.
You are.
Mm-hmm.
You are.
Sharice, this has been such an amazing interview, and we're getting to our last couple of questions. And I told you I always like to wait till I get to the day of the interview to figure out what our last question was going to be. And usually I know it. I pray about it and I meet you and do it, but I didn't know until we started talking today. And it's a big question. You're gonna say it's layered yet again, but one of the things you went into entrepreneurship. I'm gonna go back up to your bio for a moment. You went into entrepreneurship. You are an author. You are a speaker. We haven't even talked about, and maybe we should pause here and do it because I want to know more about it. We haven't talked about the Swag Awards and the Swag Alliance Foundation. Let's
Mhm.
put a pin and do that. But the question, once you talk about the Swag Awards and the Swag Alliance Foundation, the question is to move into or lean into your passions. I think a lot of people are fearful.
Mhm.
What words would you have for folks who are fearful to, I'm seeing swimming with the sharks, swim with the
Mhm.
sharks, but that being your passion and facing that fear. But we'll put a
Mhm.
pin in that and tell us more about what are these swag awards and what is the
Yeah.
Swag Alliance Foundation?
Well, the two are actually connected. So SWAG stands for Social Worker Appreciation of Greatness Awards. And that term was another term that was created by my husband. He's quite tell him what I'm thinking about, and he's able to come up with these concepts and these acronyms. And it was created back in 2019. So this was pre-COVID. And I was just thinking about, wow, I see all of these amazing award ceremonies, but rarely am I seeing social workers getting recognized for the work that they do. Maybe they think, well, that's their job. They get paid for it. But there are people who are out here volunteering, doing hard work and God's work. And it's like, okay, so are we. And I found myself getting a little annoyed and frustrated because we're already undervalued, underpaid to a large degree. And there's a title protection thing. People are calling them, you might be doing social work, but you're not a social worker. We got student loans and all of these things. We want the same title protection that our colleagues who are medical doctors and nurses and teachers, they get the title protection. So why can't we? So wanted to create something specifically for social workers. And just started with a small online celebration in 2019, reaching out to local organizations, asking them about their social workers, and they would share people's information. And we just did an online social worker recognition during the month of March because that's National Social Work Month. And people loved it. They were excited. Oh my God, what's next? And we're like, okay, we'll just have a small meetup at a hotel and have a happy hour and some appetizers, get to know each other. It'll be very informal, and it was great. And they're like, what's next? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And they're like, well, let's start a Facebook group. So we have a network of Pittsburgh social workers group, and people share resources in there. It's very informal. And I'm like, I still want this award ceremony. Like, I think we have something there, but the thought of creating an award ceremony, I know there's so much that goes into it. And my husband's like, you can do it. We can do it. And he came up with swag. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So we started putting it together. It was fun. I'm like, we got to get sponsors because there is no way we are paying for this out of our pocket. I'm all about the hard work and everything, but this could get really pricey really quickly. And one of my good friends, I want to shout her out. And, we were business colleagues and we became friends. Her name is Deanna. And she's like, don't do this without a committee. Don't try to take this on your own. I know you can do it, but that doesn't mean you should or you have to. And that was some of the best advice I got. So I'm grateful to my committee. I have an amazing committee. They're super supportive. They show up on the day of the ceremony. We meet every month. They help me, through my think tank. They do the nomination selections. And then 2 weeks before the ceremony in 2020, we got shut down because of COVID. Everybody's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I'm like, I don't know. Never lived through a pandemic. We just got to wait and see. And in 2021, we had an online celebration and we had our first in-person celebration in 2022. And this year, going into 2026, will be our sixth annual award ceremony. And it's grown. We're excited. We're well over 200 guests at this point. We might be at 300 this year, but the place that we're going to have it at, we had it there last year at the Sheraton, Pittsburgh and Station Square. They've been great hosts, and we're happy about having it there. And this year, we're going to do something different. We're going to also honor, because as speaking of systems, we want to recognize the systems that support social workers and that prioritize our well-being and that are able to retain social workers. We want to shout them out too. So we're going to recognize an organization that does that as well, along with social workers, one that's going to be an Entrepreneur of the Year and one that's going to be a Lifetime Achievement Award winner. And every year we honor, we have the Andre Be Him Be There For Me Award, and that's in honor of my late father. I lost my father during COVID. And he was super supportive of this journey. So this award is for an awardee. We have awardees share their stories, and I look at it, and then we provide, whether it's their parent, guardian, mentor, coach, whatever, that person who has been there for them throughout their social work journey, and we present them with an award at the ceremony. Well, last year we allowed the awardee to present it to them because, that makes it special. And so that's the SWAG Awards. And because of what we're trying to do with the SWAG Awards and with social work, we needed a nonprofit. And I've been fighting that for so long because I know everything that comes along with a nonprofit, but it's just been hard to grow. It's been hard to raise money because people want to support it, but they're like, oh, are you a nonprofit? Well, yeah, we have a fiscal sponsor. Oh, well, okay. Some people will say okay, and some people are like, well, no, we need you to be the nonprofit. So that's why we created the Swag Alliance Foundation. And we're a nonprofit, but we're waiting on our 501(c) status, which should officially, we paid for it. So it should officially arrive any day now. And we're providing year-round support to social workers. We're starting in Western Pennsylvania because that's the grant we were awarded from Stoughton Farm Foundation, where we can support social workers in Western Pennsylvania who are seeking financial assistance for their licensures, LSW and LCSW, low cost to no cost, continuing education credits, advocacy, supervisions. Hopefully we'll be able to work together. And we just want to be a support for social workers. And we want to expand not only nationally, but globally as well. But again, we have to seek out grants and get funding. But I'm just excited about the opportunities that we can provide to social workers with the ultimate goal of making sure that we are able to retain quality social workers in this profession. We don't want good social workers leaving because when that happens, it's just a domino effect. You talk about systemic impacts. So many people are impacted when we lose good social workers. So we just want to do what we can to make the field attractive and to bridge a lot of those gaps and minimize those barriers.
How blessed are those social workers in Pennsylvania to have y'all? And I love your husband creating these acronyms for you. The
Mm-hmm.
and the Vitamin C Healing LLC and now the
He drew
swag
the
and
logo.
he
He drew
really
the logo, and we had our graphic designer designed it. So he draws all the logos. He's a very talented person, but you can't do everything. He can draw too.
and he's not a social worker. He's just supporting
He's
social
not.
worker. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. That is so awesome. Those social workers in Pennsylvania are so blessed to have you. And thank you for doing that work. Because that
Yeah.
was one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast was I wanted social workers to tell their story and be acknowledged and recognized for what it is we are, the impact we are having on this earth and planet. And my goodness, right there in your neck of the woods, you are lifting up and inspiring social workers. And I'm like, yay for them. Yay for
Thank you.
them.
Yeah, our work isn't done. We're just getting started. We want to expand so that we can touch as many social workers as possible.
Absolutely. And so you said it would lead into facing your fears. In what ways? Yeah,
So, yeah, again, that is a layered question, and it's an important question. I just want to preface it. I have my quotes and my mantras, but fear is a natural emotion. It's okay for us to have fear. I am still scared, when I am an introverted extrovert. It's like, oh, I got to make this call. I got to talk to this person. Or even when it's time for me to get on stage in front of hundreds of people and talk about the things that I love to talk about, I feel fear. And it's about what you do with that fear. Are you going to allow it to paralyze you? Is it going to be debilitating? Or are you going to use it to move you and to move other people? Fear can be something like anger. It can be something that is productive, where you're inspiring people to change, to want to do more, to want to be better. And it's information. It reminds us that we care. It reminds us that we're human, and it keeps us humble. It's like, oh, I've been doing this for a long time. I got this. But it's like, oh, I still have some fear. I want to do a good job. It's a part. It's like, okay, that fear is here. I see you. I hear you. I feel you. Thank you for showing up to make sure that I am on point and that I deliver and that I do a good job. And one of my favorite mantras is feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
and that doesn't mean the fear went away. I literally was talking to my sister about this summer. I was like, I was still scared. I just did it
Mhm.
anyway.
Feel the
Yeah,
fear. Feel the fear and
yeah,
do it anyway. Lean into it. Work with it because I can get in my whole tangent about parts. I do parts work as a therapist, but it's a part. Like it's there for information. Don't try to push it away or run away. Work with it. Use it to your advantage.
absolutely. Thank you for such a beautiful answer. Oh, Sharice, this has been such an amazing
Yes,
interview. It
I enjoy.
really has. And I always ask, that was really great what you just gave us, and I just got inspired. But are there any final words of advice you want to leave our audience with?
I know we were, talking about compassion fatigue and burnout and beliefs that can contribute to it. I just want to leave people with we don't have to sacrifice ourselves to serve others. Increase yourself and serve from the overflow. Increase, not sacrifice.
I just saw a whole cup flowing over. I love
Overflow is
that.
for everybody else. The cup is for you.
Yes. Yes, the cup is for you. That is so beautiful. Cherise, thank you for coming on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. It has been absolutely amazing. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait for our audience to hear this episode.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. We are glad you were here. If you like this episode, please come back to hear more stories of the journeys through social work, and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. See you next time here on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.